Alright, moving on to step 13 to 15. Building the upper bulkhead assembly. Go ahead and use thread lock for the set screw and screw it in, but be careful not to screw it all the way past where it should go. Next, the 2mm spacer on top, and then the ball connector. Go ahead and build the other 3 corners as well. Now we're going to insert the M2 screws so that the pulley belt adjusters can have a place to sit. Go ahead and attach all 4 of them. And this is where you'd want to initially start and set the screw right there. So go ahead and lay the front diff and the rear diffs onto the little screw section. And then after that, we will mount the upper bulkheads. Alright, now let's attach the upper bulkheads. They take 4 M8 screws, like so. Go ahead and attach all of them if you like, but please double check and make sure that the bearing holders are in the correct spot before clamping down. And now it's time to mount the rear suspension mount. Now let's install the front upper bulkheads, like so. And before clamping down, make sure that the belt pulley adjustments are in the correct place. Next step, install the front suspension mount. Step 16 to 18. Once again, go ahead and cut open the bag, dump everything out. Here I've laid everything out so that it will be built in this process here. Note the order of the suspension arm. The dot is in the back for the rear. So go ahead and install the 10mm M4 set screw for down travel, up travel adjustment, like so. Next, go ahead and install the M10 set screw. That's going to hold the sway bar mounts. Next, we're going to install the suspension set screw, which is the longer one. Install the 2mm spacer and then the ball connector, like so. After that, insert the hinge pin plus the 1mm and 2mm spacers for the front, and then the 1mm spacer for the back. This is the default wheelbase spacing for the Ghost Evo. Now build the right side. Now we're going to use a little bit of grease to grease up the ball ends before inserting them into the car. After they've been greased, go ahead and put them in, and carefully not to lose everything as you push the suspension mounts and the A-arms together. Insert the rear suspension mount and screw it down. Moving on to the driveline. So we're going to build the rear end of the car, and this is how it's laid out. First, I insert the M3 10mm set screw on the hub, like so, plus the 2mm spacer, and then the ball connector. Go ahead and screw that down. Alright, go ahead and insert the bearings into the hub. After that, we're going to put a little bit of grease into the drive shafts, the joints right here, just in case, to make everything look nice and smooth. And next, we're going to insert the M2 12mm shaft pin and shaft end shoe. After that, set screw with a bit of thread lock. Next, we're going to put the pin into the drive shaft and then the wheel spacer. The wheel spacer is going to be a 6mm wheel hub spacer in the back. And now build the right side, so you have two identical units, one for left and one for right. Now we're going to install the hubs. I put the little shim first and slide it in like so, and press it in. Go ahead and put the set screw in to hold the outer hinge pin in place, and do that for the other side of the car as well. Now we're going to build the rear turnbuckles. Pay attention to the turnbuckle S, which is this guy here. It's basically just a lower profile turnbuckle. And the instruction book says the gap should be 24mm. So build the left and the right and snap them into place. And make sure the drive shafts are installed before snapping them down. Now open the bag to steps 19 and 22 and lay out the items. I've gone ahead and laid out the items. Feel free to pause if you'd like to take a look or see how things are laid out. Now let's assemble the front A-arm. Notice the orientation. There's a dot now on the A-arm that's going to be facing forward. Go ahead and insert the 10mm set screw with the ball connector like so, and now the M4 10mm set screw for the down travel stop. Now go ahead and slide the hinge pin through the A-arm, and let's begin to mount the spacers. So in the instructions, the book is actually facing, the A-arm is facing us. So as I build it, it's kind of facing away. So the order is 2mm, then the 1mm, then the pivot ball, and make sure they're on the right direction. And then on the back end will be a 1mm and the pivot ball. So go ahead and prepare the other A-arm like so. Alright, so now that both sides are built, let's install them to the car. So insert the hinge pins through, and then let's put the front suspension mount on and screw it down. Alright, so let's build the sway bar mounts. Times that by 2 for both sides. Alright, so now let's build the steering block assembly. Go ahead and install the screw, and then top it off with the ball connector. And let's do both sides, left and right. And now install the bearings into the steering block or the spindle. Sometimes it's easier to use the drive shaft to push it in, since the inside is going to be a little bit deep. There we go. Go ahead and finish it off with the pin and the hex. This time the front uses a 5mm hex as stock. And let's complete the other side as well. Now it's time for some thread lock, and go ahead and tighten the set screw and lock it down. And go ahead and build the other side so you have a matching set. Alright, now it's time to build the C-hub or the caster block. So notice the orientation, left and right side. First, we're going to put the steering swivel tubes or hat bushings into the caster block, like so, top and bottom. After that, we're going to match up the left caster block or C-hub with the left spindle or steering block. Go ahead and insert the 12mm set screw. It's the longer one. And then also lock it down with the 9mm round head screw. After that, go ahead and thread the ball connector, which is going to be your turnbuckle's upper connector. And there you have it. The left side is done. Go ahead now and complete the right side as well. So installing the C-hub and caster block spindle is pretty much the same as the rear end. And then hinge pin and then set screw. Do that for the other side. And bingo. So go ahead and grease up the pin for the universal drive shaft. So I went ahead and pre-built the turnbuckles. Pay attention to the ball cups. One's a ball cup, turnbuckle cup S, and the turnbuckle cup S goes to where the wheel is going to be attached to. The regular ball cup is going to attach to the inner ball stud location. Now let's move on to step 23 and 24. Open the package, and this is all about the sway bar. So there's a stabilizer collar. Go ahead and install both of them to the front and rear stabilizer. Next is to install the stabilizer ball cups. Go ahead and pre-install everything. And let's mount the rear stabilizer. So plop it on like so. And then we have the Evo stabilizer mount that it's called. So insert the set screw and screw it down to the bulkhead. After that, we're going to center the stabilizer by releasing the stabilizer collar, and then we're going to tweak the set screws in the stabilizer mount so that it's actually free and tight. So the front rear stabilizer mount in the same fashion. So go ahead and set them up and attach them to the car like so. And make sure it's tweaked, centered, and the set screws are down, but still allow the sway bar to move freely. Alright, now steps 25 and 26. This is the shock package. So go ahead and open and lay everything out. This is going to be the order that it's going to be built in. So go ahead and pause to feel free to take a look. The first thing I do is going to put a little oil in my hand and oil up the O-rings and the internal parts. So the first thing that goes in is dropping the spacer in. Next is the O-ring, and then the bottom spacer along with the shock bottom cup. Now let's prepare the shaft and the piston. So take the shaft, add an E-clip, and drop on the 3-hole piston. The kit comes with all the pistons, but the 3-hole is what is going to be the default stock piston. Go ahead and attach the top E-clip, and there you have it. So a little oil on the O-ring for the shock collar. Go ahead and insert that, and then thread it onto the shock body. After it's threaded on, go ahead and add a little oil to the shock shaft so it doesn't damage the O-ring when we insert it. Alright, so I'm going to use my shock shaft pliers to attach the shock bottoms or the shock eyelet. Nice grip here. And a couple firm twists, and the shock bottom goes on. And add shock oil inside the shock body, close to the very top. What I do is move the shock shaft so there I'll release the air bubbles inside, like so. Nice and slow at first. Go ahead and pump them a lot to get the air bubbles through. And that should be pretty good. So once the air bubbles form, we're going to have to wait a little bit so that all the air bubbles come out. I'm going to use the spring to hold the shocks up and go ahead and build the other shocks while I wait. Alright, once the air bubbles are clear, I'm going to add some more oil and then drop in the clear bladder along with the shock top and the shock body cap. Go ahead and screw that down. So also in bleeding the shock, I push the shock shaft up and let the excess oil bleed out, and then tighten the shock cap like so, and stroke it up and down. Make sure it's free and there's no air bubbles. Going to add the spring to the shock and add the shock bottom retainer. So there's one shock done. So I can now go ahead and build the other 3 shocks. The fronts are going to be the orange springs and the rear is going to be the red. Moving on to steps 27 and 30. Again, open the package, lay everything out. Here are your screws that you're going to be using. So go ahead and insert the screw to the front shock tower and add the ball connector. Pay attention to the holes that it'll be starting in as the stock location. I always kind of tend to start with the stock location and adjust from there. Now tighten the ball connector like so for both sides. And we'll do the front and the rear. So now let's install the front shock tower. Go ahead and insert the flathead screws. I usually don't tighten it all the way until all the screws are in. And there's your front shock tower. So go ahead and add the front shocks. There's a little ring in the instruction books that says to put the ring on the inside and the flat end on the outside. So let's push them on. It also goes for the bottom as well. And now the shock's complete. So let's install the rear shock tower. Again, tighten the screw in the cross way and add the shocks. Pay attention to the marking on the shocks, plastics. And the reds will be the rear, the orange will be the fronts. So here's the floating servo mount. Let's go ahead and install this guy. So let's put the screws in. Next, screw in the servo side mount. And now it's ready for your servo. Alright, the last 2 steps, steps 31 and 33, the bumper and body post assembly. So here I have laid it out. This is what it's kind of going to look like. So let's build the front bumper and body post mounts. So let's attach the front posts to the lower bumper half. Add the little lock nut like so. Now let's lay the bumper over, the foam bumper over the lower bumper. And now let's sandwich the bumper top plate and screw that together so it's nice and sturdy. And now let's add the body clips to the outside to help strengthen the bumper and body post. Next, you'll add the pin and the body height adjustment. So go ahead and, if you have a body ready, go ahead and measure that out and play around with the body height. And now let's add the body posts for the rear of the car, like so. And again, if you have the body already cut out and then the holes done, go ahead and put the body height to the right size. And there you go. Next, we're going to add the battery stops. There's one into the front that goes into floating servo, and then one in the back. And the last step is to add the plastic battery mounts. Go ahead and screw that in and attach the front bumper to the car. And once that's done, congratulations, you've just completed building the VBC Ghost Evo. I hope you enjoy the car. Feel free to text or email or however, and thanks for watching.